No. The problem is, if we call it Nick's Poker Box, I just think when people are sending things in to Nick's Poker Box, they're just going to feel either queasy or find it hilarious. Oh, inbox. Poker inbox, like an email. Oh, no, that's cool. Yeah, no. Yeah, all over it. Welcome to the very first Nick's Poker Inbox. Now, when I do one of these, I'm going to answer a question from a poker player like you dealing with one of the biggest problems that they're having right now in their poker. And I'm going to use that to hopefully give you some advice which you can put into your game straight away. I'm going to give you some tips every time we do one of these to make sure that you actually take something away from it, which should be pretty cool. Now, the best way for me to do these would be to have like a really sleek futuristic tablet, like an iPad or like an iPad basically. So I've got this. This is the biggest laptop on the planet. I got it because you can play poker on really big screens on it. It's really good for that. It's also really good for giving you a herniated disc if you try and take it anywhere. Anyway, my question this time is going to come from Sergeant Cyber in Edmonton, Canada. Welcome in Canada. He says, because of an impaired recall ability, I have a big problem with figuring out hand ranges. It's really hard to put someone on a range if you can't recall what they've done previously. Therefore, almost every hand I play is like the first time and it's really frustrating. Taking notes helps, but it isn't enough. Can you give me some advice? Well, it's a great question, Sergeant Cyber, because recall is so important in poker. I can remember interviewing Doyle and he said it was the main thing he felt had separated him from his competition at poker. He could always remember everything that had happened. It's a fantastic gift to have. But what if you don't have that gift? Or what if, even worse, you're bad at recall? Well, the good news is I think there's things that you can do, and I think there's things that everyone should do and can improve on. So there's two types of recall in poker, aren't there? There's remembering what an opponent's done and what an opponent's like, and then there's also recalling during a hand. So I'll give you some tips for both. The first thing I'd say is, the great news about memory is, unless you've got a medical problem that stops this, everyone, no matter how bad you think your memory is, can improve it. Scientists have shown that every single thing we've ever experienced is locked away in there somewhere, which is why if you hear a song you haven't heard for 20 years, it'll suddenly, and it gets played, you'll suddenly get all kinds of associations that you'll remember when you last heard that song, because it's all in there, which is pretty clever stuff. So it's just a case of getting better at recall. Now, there are some ways of doing this. I'd recommend an author called Tony Buzan that you might have heard of, Buzan. He's written a lot of good memory books with kind of systems that you can actually go and use. It's all very clever stuff. Now, if that doesn't work for you, or if that seems like it's too tricky or whatever, then there's some specific poker things that you can do. Sergeant Cyber says that taking notes aren't enough, and I think I mainly disagree, and I would for this reason, which is I don't think most poker players take notes in the right way. And it's one of the big differences between recreational players and professional level players. If you look at the notes that a player takes, you'll see recreational players take very few notes. Maybe you can think about your own note taking. It probably says something like, this player's a fish, or die piggy die, or I hate you, or occasionally it'll say this player's really good, don't get involved, or he raises a lot, or something like that. If you look at a professional player's notes, they'll have a really kind of systemised way of taking notes, and they'll have all of the tendencies of that player and lots of other helpful stuff. So my advice is to really get much, much better at taking notes. And in your notes on a player, you want to have the following things. You want to have his main tendencies, so what kind of player is he? This is above and beyond anything you have in your poker tracker, by the way. His kind of peculiarities, like things he might do with bet sizing or things you've noticed him doing that are different. Then you want to know his history with you. So what pots has he played with you? And what has he seen you do? Because this is something very important. If he's seen you make a lot of bluffs, like a player will often have a false impression of how you actually play. You want that in there too. You can't have too much really. You want as much information as possible in those notes. If you're doing it live and you have bad recall ability, just do it on your phone. You know, in the old days, you'd see professional players in Vegas, they would actually write down things on a pad. That happened, you know, quite a lot if they couldn't remember it. Or they'd remember it and then they'd go off in a break and make notes, so you can do that. But if you're during, you know, between hands or something, as long as you don't miss too much, you can just make notes on your phone on players. It's a really, really good thing to do, and I'm surprised more people don't do it, so that is a tip that you can use. The other tip that I would use for recall during hands is get used to replaying hands in your head. especially if it's one you're not involved in. You can use it to hone this skill. So when the play gets to the river, just think back over the hand as it went through and assign a range to each player in the hand. So think, okay, he raised on that dry board, therefore, you know, I know that he's pretty tight. He either got something strong or he's making some kind of misguided bluff, or so I put his hand range at bluffs, super strong hands, you know, one pair hands, whatever it is. But get used to going through that process and strengthening up that recall muscle. So the 3 tips are from today's session. Always make copious notes on your opponents. You can't make too many notes, whether you do it on a phone live or in a book live, or whether you do it on screen online. Always make copious notes. Okay? Second, you're going to want to always replay hands in your head, almost while they're happening, and replay hands that you're not in to strengthen that recall muscle. Okay? And the third piece of advice is you're going to want to change your notes when you notice significant action. Okay, so don't get wedded to one set of notes. If you see something that changes your read on a player, you want to change that note as well. And that's it. I hope that's helped you, Sergeant Cyber. I hope that's given you something that you can put into your game straight away and get some results. Great to talk to you today. There'll be another Nick's Inbox, all right, children, very soon. Do share this on Facebook or Twitter or any other kind of social media that they've probably just invented during the time it's taken me to give you this talk. And leave your comments below. I'd love to know what you think and if this has helped. Talk soon.